Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And as you are getting quite used to, you have Lucy and myself with you in the beginning portions anyway. And so today, what it feels like we're going to do, and as you're all pretty much aware, a lot of times Lucy and I are in conversation before we start one of these sessions. And we kind of talk about questions that individuals have had, some of the ideas that I get from Desatu, a larger aspect of me as I go through my week, things of that nature. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to begin with a question that, when Lucy presented it to me, felt like a really good subject area to explore from Desatu's point of view too. I could feel the energy go, yeah, that feels like a good idea. So I also know that it's going to be presented in a way that might be a little bit surprising considering what the subject matter is going to be. But then that's just kind of, this is an old term, but I'll use it anyway. Par for the course, maybe we'll say. So if you give me just a few moments here, and we'll let more of me show up. So once again, we would take the opportunity to greet all of you today and to express, as we always do, how much we appreciate our interactions with all of you, because of course it lends so very much to our exploration of our environment and our experience of reality as well. So as was mentioned, we have become familiar through the dialogue that Chuck and Lucy have of a particular direction of information and a topic that an individual would like to have explored. And we thought that was a good idea. And what we would like to do today is approach it in this manner. So, most of you who follow this type of information are familiar with a term called the shift, your shift, a transition in how you are doing things in your reality. And that flowing from having a wider and wider experience of who and what you are as the days and the weeks and the months and the years pass. So in that, one of the things that you're doing with that is you are altering definitions, ways that you have described things, phrases that you have applied to things, to experiences. And so within that theme, we would like to do that a little bit with the subject matter that we're going to be exploring today. And that particular idea, we'll call it that in this moment, is associated with a word, and that word is dimensions. And in that, again, if you've followed any type of metaphysical or spiritual content provided in many ways, you become familiar with this word dimensions, dimensions that you exist in, dimensions that you express yourself in. And so what we'd like to do today is we would like to explore that a little bit. So in terms of linear time, your experiences of who you are have been relatively circumscribed. You think of yourself, largely yet, as consciousness that is associated with your body, this circumscribed aspect of what you are. And you do this with all the things in your environment. When you think of either your apartment or your home or whatever your living situation is. It is, again, a circumscribed area within which you have a particular experience of your life. As you walk down the street, you see buildings. Again, these things, these circumscribed expressions that you can enter into and have a particular experience within. Cities are like this. They have boundaries around them, right? You do this with all areas of your experience. A tree is a circumscribed thing. A rock is a circumscribed thing. A body of water is a circumscribed thing. A cloud, even many times that you see it in the sky, it has these borders to it, right? So this is the way that you have become familiar with yourself and your reality, is that there is a boundary to you, right? You think in terms of an experience happening within a place, we'll say now, whether that place is the body, whether that place is a building, whether that place is a city, whatever that place may happen to be. As a result of that, when you think in terms of dimensions, this theme carries into that. You think in terms of a place where things are occurring. You do this in larger aspects too. Your solar system, galaxies are defined. You think in terms of universes as being this huge but yet circumscribed experience. It has boundaries, right? So you consider your experiences, however vast you may consider your experiences, to occur in a type of a place. So what we would like to do for you is to suggest something different. Because again, as you go and expand, doing this with yourself will help you along those lines. Now, a short time ago, we had a discussion concerning the subject matter of attention, your attention, and how that plays in to the experience of reality that you have. Now, the idea of a dimension, and let's let's start with your physical dimension. So your physical dimension is a very broad experience. You have within it many, many, many experiences. You have experience of physicality. You have experience of certain feeling states, certain emotional states, certain thought processes, certain things that you associate with psychologically, perhaps we'll say. You have the concept of time and the variations of time within your physical dimension, within the experience of your physical dimension. There are many, many, many types of experiences that are part of what you call your physical dimension. What we'd like to suggest to you in that is that this is what they are. They are experiences within the idea of a larger experience. Physicality, a physical dimension, is experienced by you in a particular way. As sort of an aside to this, what we'd like to add, and you may have heard this from other individuals, is that the foundational expression of what you are, of consciousness, of all of what you are, is creation and experience. This is why you create, to experience all of yourself that you possibly can, which of course you will never reach the end of because you are infinite. It's a perpetual exploration of all the ways you can explore and experience yourself. Experience and creation are like two sides of the same coin. If you flip a coin in the air, that coin spins in the air, both sides move simultaneously. Within your physical experience, you have a concept that one occurs before the other. It does not, actually. The creation and the experience happen simultaneously. That's just a little mention at this moment. So, when you speak about dimensions, and maybe we could say, for the sake of what we're expressing right now, we have a physical dimension that you're expressing, this physical dimension, and then we could think in terms of non-physical dimensions. And maybe in that, we would utilize your ideas of dream time as a dimension, as a different type of an experience, right? Because the actions and the experiences that are going on in your dream time, if you have had any dreams, you're always dreaming, of course, if you remember those dreams, if you remember your participation in those movements of your consciousness, they are different than what you experience within physical reality, within this physical dimension. Because, of course, there are many, many, many physical realities, different physical dimensions. And the experiences that are had within them are unique to each of those physical dimensions. So then, in that, a dimension of activity is not a place. A dimension of activity has got to do with where you put, as that very broad you, where you put a part of your attention. And what you choose to do, what you choose to create as an idea, where it is you're putting your attention. So again, let's talk about this concept of an idea. So right now, to view and to listen to what's being spoken in this moment, you're using some type of a device. You're using maybe a mobile device, maybe a tablet, possibly a computer monitor. At one time, all of those devices were an idea. And then through a process, they became the experience of the device that you're having right now. From the broader use experience, physical reality is an idea. It is a way to pull together consciousness to have a particular type of an experience. And in this one, it involves these expressions called planets. And on this planet, these ideas called land and water and air and gravity and vegetation and life forms of all the various types that you have, the interactions between the life forms, this idea of time that flows through all of it, concepts like aging, concepts like birth, like death, many ideas are held within the idea of your physical dimension. So there's a weaving of various ways that you have your experiences. And so as you conceptualize an experience from this very broad aspect of who and what you are, as you will talk in terms that make sense in this reality, as you come up with an idea of what you would like to create, and you begin the process of molding, shall we say, consciousness into that, not singularly, in other words, the wider you on its own, but many, many, many wide yous, wider aspects of consciousness, because it's a collaborative thing. We'll express to you that consciousness never does things singularly, because first of all, there is no singularity to consciousness. Consciousness is a huge collective of expression that's going on all the time. So as you develop an idea, as this idea is developed within a large aspect of consciousness, perhaps we'll say, and as these wider aspects of consciousness collaborate in the pulling together of this idea, the expressing it through consciousness, through the energy of consciousness, configuring it in all the ways that they want to configure it. And of course, as you do this, as you've done this with your dimension has seen many shifts, many different themes played out within it. Many of your ideas of mythological creatures are actually things that had happened in your physical dimension in what you term your past. There have been many, many ways that you've expressed your forms within this dimension, within this physical dimension, in terms of what you would call your past. So you've done many things with this. You've played with this physical dimension in many, many ways. So in that, you've had a broad spectrum of experiences within the context of a particular type of an experience. It's as if you walk into a library, there will be certain experiences you will have because you're in a library. If you walk into a gym, there's particular experiences you will have because you're in a different experiential idea, a gym. You're not going to have a library experience in a gym. So a physical dimension is then like that in that it is set up so it provides a particular type of experiences. Now, the spectrum is broad, of course, within this physical dimension, but you will have experiences that are associated with that. So a dimension is a particular type, even though that type can involve many things, actually many other dimensions, and we'll build on that. But a dimension is a big room, shall we say, within which certain types of experiences are had. And the broader you brings its attention to that particular grouping of experiences. So, in that wider understanding of things, that is a dimension. Now, within your physical dimension are many, many, many other dimensions. One of these is time. As all of you have probably experienced, you've experienced time in a variety of ways. All of these are various dimensions of time, various expressions of the experience of time. You've experienced emotional states in whatever context you've had those emotional states. They are associated with other aspects of yourself, but in that moment, they are unique. They are a different experience. Let's say if you're feeling joy, it is certainly a different experience than if you're experiencing anxiety or, let's say, anger. They're very different emotional states. They are dimensions of emotional experience. So, to add a simplified, perhaps somewhat confusing, but more encompassing idea to this word dimension that you've utilized, and to again push the boundaries out a little bit in that. A dimension is a type of an experience. You could say it's a type of an action. Whichever way is easiest for you, again, it's like the two sides of the coin. Action and experience occur simultaneously. You believe in your experience that the action happens a little bit before it is, you call it perceived from your perspective, before your senses pick up on it. But actually, it's occurring simultaneously. The lag occurs within your physical dimension, but they happen at the same time. Action and experience are a concurrent thing. So, in this, what our goal is in this is to just have this, hold this loosely within the back of your mind someplace. And as you're having your experiences, as you're listening to individuals use the word dimension, again, remind yourself that a dimension is an experience or a particular type of an action, whichever seems to be easier for you to go to. This will allow information from the broad of you to flow into your experience and to begin to provide for you through experience a broader understanding of what your experience is about, how your experience is actually going on for you. This will occur not only through us, but through others and through your own experience in an increasing way as the months and the years go by in your experience. Because your process here in this quote unquote time period is about you broadening your awareness of who and what you are. In that, the definitions and the experiences that you hold of particular things are going to change and shift and become something different. So this is a part of that movement for you. In that, this feels like a good pause point for us. And so we'll pause now and we'll see if there are questions related to this, any expansions or follow-up questions, or even things that might be a little bit different.
Thank you.
You're
You
welcome.
talked about the emotional aspect of this physical dimension. Are you able to talk about other dimensions occurring, other experiences occurring within the physical dimension that we're on now that you haven't mentioned in the past?
Yes. And again, so in alignment with what we expressed towards the end, that you can really think of dimensions as experiences. So heat is a dimension of your experience. Cold is a dimension of your experience. Sound is a dimension of your experience. Touch is a dimension of your experience. Thought is a dimension of your experience. And so what you're having is you're having a mixture, and this is just very few of the various dimensions that collaborate within the idea of what is not only a physical dimension, but this particular physical dimension, because of course it differs from other physical dimensions. There are guidelines, there are ideas that you utilize here that aren't utilized sometimes at all in other physical dimensions, or if they are, sometimes in very, very different ways. Along those lines, we are going to express this as well. And again, as part of the dipping your toes into a little deeper into the pool as far as your understanding of things is concerned. So there's an idea within this exploration that's termed probable realities. And so let's say, as a single individual out there, let's say that regardless of whether you're in a relationship or not, just consider yourself as single right now. Whoever may be listening, you're single in this moment. And in front of you, you have, let's say, three choices, three individuals who would like to be in relationship with you. So in this perspective, as you make that choice, whatever that choice may be, you will know through this exploration that all choices were actually made. And so there are different lives. Let's say that you choose to go down to a car dealership and to purchase a particular car. You know that there's another expression of you where that car was not purchased. You know there's another expression of you that went someplace else to purchase a car. You know there's another expression of you that went to the same place, purchased a different car in many permutations. So two things in that. First of all, there's the idea that, let's say you're familiar with a building, and you know in that building there's a variety of floors and there's a variety of rooms in that building. And so in that, when you think of probable realities, the penchant for most individuals is to think in a similar way, that there are a certain number of probable realities out there, and you were choosing of one of those. which is not actually what's going on. What's actually is going on is that you're presented with a choice in the moment and you make that choice. As you make that choice, all of those probable realities are created in that moment that you make that choice. They were not pre-existing for you to choose from. In other words, when you walk to your car dealership in that moment, there aren't all these choices that are there for you to choose for. There's a choice that you will make, and in that moment, all those other choices are created instantaneously from your choice. Now, also, what you're talking about with this is you're talking about an expression of your energy out into consciousness as you make your choice. So you could walk into the car dealership and you could choose that car. Now, that energy shoots out as a choice, and that energy is just energy. It's actually utilizable in any way, shape, or form that any other aspect of consciousness wants to apply it to. So the probable expression of that energy in another dimension may be as somebody picking up their baby, or maybe as somebody opening a door. It's not necessarily something that's very close to what you just chose here. A probable reality can show up in many, many, many ways. It's not just about another iteration of something that you just did that's very close to that. Again, these ideas are because of your ideas of choice within your dimension, within your experience, linearly speaking, of your experience. You've created ideas about these things, and the information has been shared with you by others in a way that matches your ideas earlier on. But from this point forward, it will only be us that will begin to expand the way that you understand how your energy is utilized within consciousness. It will be others. And again, this is because this is what you are doing. You are pushing the walls of your understanding of your reality out. You are broadening your understanding of what consciousness actually is, how it actually moves, how your energy is actually expressed, how there is much more fluidity to who and what you are than you have been led to believe, shall we say, through your physical experience to this point in time.
So if I go to the car dealership and as I understand myself to be right now, make a choice for one vehicle and not that vehicle. It's not that there's a portion of me that goes off and has as conscious an expression of life with that other vehicle as I am having here with my current choice of vehicle. It's that there's almost like a fragment that of the possibility, the potential that's there can be utilized in a lot of different ways by me or other people. But it's not that that portion of me, that experience of me went on to have a completely separate life that marches on as we understand it through time. Is that correct?
It's a both and thing. Those can certainly occur. But then also, when that energy goes out, it goes out into all of consciousness, not just the consciousness in your physical dimension or other physical dimensions. It goes out into all of consciousness. And it is then freely, again, utilizable by any aspect of consciousness. So that energy will be transformed in a different way, which is then a probable usage of that energy, which is different than what you've done with the energy. So it's been expressed differently. It can be something that's quite close, but it can be something that's very diverse from that as well. Something that is seems to be almost unrelated, but it is because it's a direct expression of that energy.
Can you say a little bit more about the energy that's in one car choice versus the other?
Sure. So again, the concept that is quite understandable within your experience is that if whoever is listening right now, if you're at some sort of a desk or some sort of a table or whatever it might happen to be, any kind of a solid structure, you touch that structure right now, just touch it with your hands. You believe that that is a structure that's been there for a while. It's not. It is constantly a new structure. The energy of that structure, energy flows continually. And within your experience, you create it to seem as if it's solid and that it has been that way for time, a certain length of time, which has never been the case. The case has been that energy is constantly in motion. As it moves, it recreates and recreates and recreates the structures around you. And so energy is always in movement. And so as you make a choice, this is the same thing. In that moment, your choice is configured this particular way, but you're always expressing energy. That's what you do. You express energy continually, perpetually. And as you do that, you recreate your choice over and over and over and over and over again. It's never the same energy. It's always a new expression of your energy, but expressed in a very similar manner. And so as that energy, if you can think of yourself as a spear and your energy blasting out from that sphere in all directions, that's going on all the time. And your energy carries a theme with it as you express what you will with it, but that theme does not need to be utilized in the same way by the next aspect of consciousness that utilizes the energy that's come its way through what you've just expressed. It's free to configure that any way it wants to, but in a sense, it flowed from you. It has a particular signature to it. And in that regard, it's a probable expression of that energy because it had a particular type of an expression. Now, in a more expansive way, you could say that your expression of that energy is a probable expression of that energy that flowed through you from other aspects of consciousness. So, really, this is a perpetual thing. But to keep it a little easier to understand, we will utilize you as the beginning point of that experience and making a choice, and then other choices flowing out from that. But just understand that the choices do not need to be in any way similar. Not that some of them won't be, but some will be very, very different than the original choice was. You may choose to buy a house, and as that energy flows out in the consciousness, that may mean that somebody buys a dress or somebody climbs into bed and there's a bed that's part of that energy. It can be expressed in many ways.
So, how could you give an example of how we can use this information in a practical way?
The practical way is in allowing yourself to loosen up your ideas of how you think your dimension is formed around you, about the concrete way that you believe that it is formed, about the definitive way that you believe that it is formed, about the cause and effect way that you believe that it is formed, because it is not formed in that way. And as you broaden into who and what you are, that's an understanding that will become real, very real to you. You will understand that it is not cause and effect. It is about choice, always.
So,
In this
let's look at
present,
it. Sorry.
in this present, you believe that choice has to do with how something flows from one thing to the other. You don't see all the choices that you could be making because your ideas say that this is the flow that it'll take.
Mhm. So, let's say we're looking at a person who has a conflict in their family life, and they only are seeing a couple of choices available to them right now. One is to stay there and endure it, or to leave and separate themselves from it. How would you look at a situation like that where there's been an enduring family conflict?
We would express an approach that we would express regardless of what's going on with an individual. And that is to turn your attention back to yourself. And in that, to be as open and honest with yourself as you possibly can, and to come to an understanding about what in this moment is the choice that feels best for you to make for your existence. And if you do that, that's the choice to make. Now, that may be the more difficult choice to make, and you may have to make that choice in smaller steps. But we would say that that is always the direction. Turn to yourself. What is it that feels for your existence in that moment is the way to steer your choices, the choices to make. Because again, there is never a way that you will ever be the one who's making the choices for the individuals around you. That will never happen. Not as much as you would ever like it to happen. That will never happen. By you making your own choices, whether you understand this or not, that model of you making your choices, of being true to yourself in making your choices, that energy shoots out and affects those individuals. And if they're struggling with making their own choices, choices that are, shall we say, beneficial to them, that model, even though they may not be in a place to accept it in that moment, is one of the most powerful things that you can do for them in that moment, is to imbue them with that energy. Not that you're saying, this is the energy I'm sending you, because that's not necessary. As you make the choice that is within the integrity of you being who you want to be, that's automatically the energy that is, shall we say, headed in their direction. So that would be our recommendation.
Okay. You mentioned that we're going to be experiencing changes in definition, and I was wondering if you could say a bit more about that.
Yes, and your world has already seen many of these things. We will grab this. For those of you who have, in terms of linear time, enough age, this is not what a telephone was 40 years ago, correct? Your definition of what a phone is now is very different, right? Your TV sets are very different than they first came on the market, right? Your ideas of automobiles are very different, right? Your ideas of science has changed immensely since that word was first introduced in your society. Your ideas of what religion is very different now than when you first had that word come into your usage throughout the globe. So, in almost any area that you can think of clothing and how simple clothing used to be two centuries ago, and now all the diversity of clothing. Think about furniture and the same thing. You can think of now in this time almost anything that individuals are interacting with, and how what that is now is so very different than what it was a century ago or 2 centuries ago. You continue to do this with yourselves, and it pervades your life. It's in all areas of your life. The largest place it is, however, is in how you consider yourselves. This is this is the now place that you've chosen to make the largest changes in your experience of your existence. It used to be in your more immediate existence, in things like automobiles and furniture and clothing and communication devices and things like this, in exploration out there. Now it's going to be in, shall we say, an inner exploration of self. This will be where you turn your attention. In that, you will redefine how you see yourself. You will redefine many, many, many things about what you believe your reality was about, what you believe love means, what you believe relationship is about, the ideas of enduring relationship, the concepts of marriage, the concepts of partnership, the concepts of child rearing, shall we say, bringing up children, the concepts of education. There's going to be many, many, many things that change as you become increasingly familiar with who and what you are, how information is shared, how flexible consciousness is, the ways that you can utilize your consciousness to interact with other individuals. So there's going to be much change in many areas because you'll become increasingly familiar with, in one part, how much more easily you can do things. And in another part, the still very valid aspect of how unique everybody's experience is within this particular physical dimension, and how individuals will be able to express themselves in their existence in ways that are their preferences and have their existence support that, which presently most of you do not believe that you can do. You believe you need to work in particular ways, and you see it as that. Many people, you see it as an arduous thing to do. You will shift away from that as well. There will be many, many, many ways that you will shift as you become increasingly familiar with who and what you are.
And I recall in a recent conversation asking the question, wouldn't there be chaos if we were all doing what feels best to us? And you addressed that, saying, no, not
Again,
at all.
if you think of your Mr. Christopher Columbus time and how people got around the world in that time, that's changed immensely. There's been no chaos. Again, if you think of these devices and how they began, they've changed immensely. There's been no chaos. You've introduced things in your societies relatively slowly at first. It's speeding up a little bit. First of all, you had individuals that married across faiths. Protestants married Christians, who married Muslims, who married whatever. And long enough ago, that did not happen. No chaos. Then you had races that began to intermarry, right? It wasn't just African Americans marrying African Americans or white people or Asian people marrying each other. Now, whoever it is marries whoever it is, not in all places on your planet, but in many places in your planet. Again, no chaos. You have individuals who have same sex relationships now. At one point, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if that happens, right? Because again, the tendency that you go to many times is that this is going to be a decision that is going to be one that everybody has to make, regardless of what your preferences are. And you find out none of that is true. None of your fears come to fruition. And so, again, those relationships are now much more commonplace. And again, no chaos. Now you have individuals who are expressing themselves as neither male or female. They may move in between. They may have not a feeling for your traditional ideas of that at all. And you're going to see again with these individuals, no chaos. This will not happen. As you move into these things, you bring more of your own awareness of how you can do these into your reality. Now, does this mean that some people will not be greatly challenged by this? It doesn't mean that. You will have people who will be greatly challenged by this, but you'll have other people who will flow into it very naturally. You're seeing more and more of that all the time. Why? Because more and more of you have already shifted, shall we say, into more expansive ways of viewing yourself. Consider the idea of spiritual or metaphysical studies. At one point, if we were to look back a couple hundred centuries, it was only the people who were considered to be monks or clergy or priests or individuals like that who really did that in their life to any substantial degree. Now it's millions and millions and millions of people on your planet who do this as part of their life. Again, no chaos. So again, you do not need to worry about things being overly challenging on your planet unless you're quite convinced that they need to be in order for these changes to take place. And these stories are in your history. So we would suggest you to see them as that, to see them as stories, to see them as in that moment, because of the way that life was, because of the things that were commonplace in that world, that those were the futures that could be felt into, shall we say. Your world is different now. You can do different things. You do not need to have a world filled with earthquakes and tsunamis and forest fires and things of this nature as this change happens with you. But this will be up to you. You need to learn what to do with your emotional states. You need to understand what your emotions are there to convey to you. And then you need to, in recognizing that, act on that information that you have. Because your emotions, if they're not addressed, express themselves in nature. Because again, you create the planet, you create the weather. Your emotional states are very powerful as they interact with your environment around you. If you're not addressing your emotional states collectively, they will be collectively expressed around you to experience. But you don't need to do it that way.
Can we talk about that further? What is the purpose of emotion and how we work with that
It is
productively?
twofold. One is that as you, as the collection of yous, we will say it that way, the wider yous, came up with the idea of this particular physical dimension. One of the ideas was that this dimension would incorporate as one of the foundational aspects of it emotion, emotional experiences. So that's a very powerful aspect of it. It's involved in almost everything that goes on in your life is an emotional thing. Secondarily is that emotion is a type of a communication from the deeper part of you. It's you tapping you on the shoulder, providing you with an emotion to catch your attention. Now it's twofold. Again, the emotion is an experience, but it also plays this communication role. To catch your attention to go, okay, there's something going on here, which is about me utilizing particular ideas, particular beliefs in a particular way to steer my experience of reality. And do I want to do that or not? Again, it's a choice point. So it allows you a moment of communication about what's going on in that moment to then view that, to view how you're creating that moment, to then decide, do you want to move forward with that or not? Ideally speaking, anyway. But if you don't understand that emotions are there to do that for you, you can miss that entirely. You can get actually caught up in the messenger, which is the emotion, and you can get kind of stuck in that. Now, is that wrong or bad? No, it's a valid experience. But if it's not the experience that you would like to have, then understanding the communicative nature of the emotion and what it's there to tell you about the beliefs that you're using in that moment and how you can be creating your experience differently if you want to is a very valuable component of emotions as well.
Super. What are examples of the types of emotions that give rise to the calamitous weather that's being experienced around the globe?
So they are many, and they involve themes. And the themes can shift depending on the areas. But what you find is that you'll find that there are a group of individuals in an area, and usually there are many individuals, and they have a particular belief about their reality. And their belief about their reality creates a particular emotional expression. So you may feel hopelessness, let's say, in a particular area of on your planet, which of course has got nothing to do with the reality of you as a creative your experience. There's no reason to be hopeless. So if you feel hopeless, then the idea is to express and explore that hopelessness and why do you feel hopeless? Now, of course, what this entails is looking at your existence in a different way than you've been looking at existence. Because if you look at existence in a way that says you can be the victim of the actions of somebody outside of you, then what you need to do is you need to be able to, or what you can do, is you can look at different ways of understanding that. Because there are many examples around your planet now, easily accessible examples around your planet now of individuals who've gone from the one way of doing it to the other way of doing it and whose lives reflect that. And so if you make that choice, what you will see is you will become familiar through experience of the ways that consciousness functions to bring about your experience of your reality. You'll become familiar with what we've termed in the past are the mechanisms of consciousness, because there are, for your dimension, ways that consciousness moves, ways that consciousness expresses itself that pull together, shall we say, your experience of your reality. And if you're familiar with those, then you can utilize those to your advantage. And that's what this period of time is about also. Becoming familiar enough with you and how you create this reality to then create it in the manner that you would like to create it.
We have touched on the mechanisms of creation and consciousness before, and I'm curious if you could summarize them succinctly here.
Yes,
Oops.
a succinct summarization would be an interesting thing. So, the cornerstone in your reality of this is the filters that you've put in place that are termed beliefs. Now, they can move very easily sometimes. And this will help you to understand how naturally you leave beliefs behind. In other words, you have around you all beliefs that can be utilized. There, let's say you're standing in a room and the room's filled with molecules of air. You can say you're standing in a virtual space and you're surrounded by beliefs. All of them are there. You pick and choose at any particular moment which you're going to use. So, at one point in time, in the West anyway, you may believe there was this character that showed up on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day called Santa Claus. It's a belief, right? In a particular action that's taking place. And after a while, that belief faded. You may have had the belief of the Easter Bunny as well. Same thing. After a while, that belief faded. If you learned to ride a bike before you were shown, helped, mentored to ride that bike, you had a belief that you could not ride the bike. And then you shifted to a belief that you could ride a bike. Within your country, there are still, within the way governments form themselves, political parties. You may be an individual that early in your life, especially maybe when you were in college, if you went to college, and then for perhaps a decade or so after that, you found yourself aligning with one particular party. And you were very invested in that, with the ideas and the concepts of that. And then you found yourself a business owner and your business grew. And as a result of that, you shifted the way that you focused yourself in that. And you then aligned with a different particular party. And you found that, again, it was a natural flow. And so these filters of what you believe is true about you, what you believe is true about life, what you believe is true about others, what you believe is true about your existence, are there to, in effect, form your existence for you, bring your existence to you in a particular way. They're filters. But also, they are your choice. Now, some of these choices are more difficult than others. Some of them are a little bit more substantial, is how we say, than others are. This includes some of the things that we talked about just a short time ago. Who should you marry within what religion? Who should you marry within what race? Right? These types of things took longer periods of time for individuals to move beyond those particular belief systems. But then you have gentled that up in many ways, right? You have allowed a softness to that. You have allowed yourself to experiment. You allowed yourself more freedom to do those things. You've allowed yourself more choice. You still utilize beliefs. Now you believe that it's fine to marry someone from another religion. Not a problem. You believe that it's fine to marry someone of a different race. You believe it's fine to have a relationship that's a same-sex relationship. You're still utilizing beliefs. They're just different beliefs that you're utilizing, right? Something that doesn't seem quite as obvious. You believe that food has a taste. That is a belief. That is an idea that's utilized with this particular dimension that shows up as those types of filters that gives you a particular experience, taste. Same thing with smell. Same thing with look, right? You believe that if you look at a particular flower, it has a particular color or it has a particular smell. That's an experience that comes to you through these filters that are called beliefs. They color all parts of the experience that you have in your life. So, in your reality, one of the most powerful mechanism of consciousness that affects your reality are beliefs. If you recognize that, as well as the, we'll phrase it this way, inalienable ability you have as an expression of consciousness to choose, when you pull the two of those together and dovetail those together, it will be a very powerful thing for you to be able to do, because you'll be able to recognize your beliefs, you'll be able to recognize your choices, and you will make your choices, and you will utilize a different set of beliefs as you make your choices. But you'll always be utilizing beliefs. You'll just be utilizing different ones. You can smell a flower and you can utilize a belief that says there is no scent to a flower, and that's the experience that you will have. As you grow in your awareness, you'll be able to shift that around anytime you want to. You can make that flower smell like a chocolate candy bar if you want to. You can make that flower smell like a pot of chili if you want to. You can do whatever you want. This is the idea. It's your ability to choose that you are becoming increasingly familiar with. And in this dimension, because you utilize beliefs, you will continue to do that. You won't divest yourself of beliefs. You will just make it very flexible. You will utilize whatever set or subset of beliefs that you want to have your experience, to color your experience. So those are probably the most important mechanisms of consciousness right now to focus your attention on, are those things.
Super. Thank you so much. Do you have any final comments for today?
If we would make one comment, we would say this in association with the things that we've talked about within this particular session, to allow yourself as much flexibility and acceptance to differences and changes that come into your life in whatever way that happens as you possibly can. Many times you may not know why that event or circumstance or situation showed up in your life. Give it time for it to blossom for you, to bring you an understanding of why that is, to understand how that is there to help you to experience more of who and what you are. So we would say acceptance and flexibility would be the thing to kind of apply to as much of your life as you possibly can. So that would be what we would comment on.
Thank you so much.
And again, as always, we hope that all of you have a incredible experience of your existence. Thank you.